Speaking to us on BBC Newcastle, Radio for the North East.
And on that note, let's bring in Simon Stevens, who's Director of Casework for Addicts UK. Have you got anything to add to Kevin's words there, Simon?
I didn't hear a lot of what Kevin said, but there is a very strong argument to say that we will not change our behaviour unless we're forced to do so, or that some crisis occurs. Human beings learn through crisis, and I'm using crisis in its very widest sense. A small child learns that if you fall over and, the only way you can learn to walk is to practice walking and you will fall over. Oh, no, by the way, it hurts when you fall over, so it's better to stay upright.
When it comes to addictions, so say if we talk about drugs, for instance, you don't have to be taking the drugs in the first place. So you're making a decision there before a crisis could have potentially happened for some people.
Right. Then you need to separate between those people who are likely to become psychologically dependent because of the way their brain's wired, and those people who simply choose to use drugs for recreational purposes.
Right.
And they're two different groups. And yes, in the second group, recreational choices, you can make recreational use of drugs, you can make a choice. For a lot of people, drugs are a rite of passage. If you have the brain that's likely to be addictive, then you don't know that, and then you just, like everybody else, recreationally say smoke some dope, or ketamine's a big thing now, that then you find that those addictive processes, once you've tried the drug, those addictive processes get to work. I mean, I'm a great believer that addiction is an illness in the sense of most addicts are incredibly sensitive people, and they also possess a dopamine system that relates to things like ketamine or cannabis or heroin or even sugar in a way that it doesn't relate to it in a larger number of other human beings.
So if we're talking about turning your life around, how do those people in particular do that if they're vulnerable?
To turn your life around, something has to occur. My personal life story, because I always say that I'm a recovering addict and alcoholic, I reached a place that was incredibly dark and dismal and desperate. Got to that point in life where I didn't want to kill myself, or I didn't want to wake up. I just simply did not want to exist anymore. I reached a point where all I could do was become use drugs or alcohol to become unconscious as quickly as possible. That, once it became I became aware of the fact there was actually something that I could do about it. That was my crisis in life. That was my big crisis, where the cost of using drugs now outweighed any benefit, any possible benefit that I perceived they gave me. And that created the need to change. Somebody who is told, because I heard earlier that you were talking about weight and things, and this is not relating to yourself, but somebody who's told that, well, if you don't lose weight, then your heart's going to stop working simply because of the amount of weight that you're carrying and things. That becomes their crisis. They're called normative crises. That we have them all throughout our life, and they encourage us to change behaviour. Another classic example that many people will be familiar with is when you have your first real love in adolescence and things. That, well, you know what, it doesn't work out, and you feel a lot of heartbreak and things. But your parents say, well, it's something they need to go through because it's part of the growing experience. The reason I'm so passionate about this is that all too often we have harm minimization things put in where we supply people, say, with methadone, in the case of drugs and things. You stop that kind of normative crisis from happening, and you simply maintain people on the status quo.
Well, you say they need to have the pain.
I absolutely do believe that if without pain is a part of life. If you don't have pain in life, you cannot grow.
Simon, thank you very much. Really interesting way of looking at all of that. And actually, he was talking about somebody who was battling weight problems. Only last week, I met somebody.